Are our NATO allies freeloaders, led by weaklings, part of a society that is falling apart? If you listen to many of the pronouncements of the Trump administration, that's what you would think. And the media certainly has trumpeted many of those pronouncements. However, if you watched Secretary Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference last week, you'd get a different story. Here's a couple quotes. Europe and America are bound by history, values, and destiny. We're not just allies, we're part of the same civilization, and our security is inseparable. He also said, because for us Americans, our home may be the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Got a standing ovation for that, or at least a good bit of applause. He said that twice, actually, in the speech. So what is actually going on here? We're going to trace a little bit of history, show you the reasons behind this, and the final reason might be a little bit surprising to you, so hang on to the end. First, let's go with some quotes. This is from the media during President Trump's first term. New York Times said Trump discussed pulling U.S. from NATO. Aides say amid new concerns over Russia. The transatlantic alliance in the age of Trump, the coming collisions. Delinquent and obsolete, Trump's rhetoric threatens transatlantic stability of NATO. Could Trump pull U.S. out of NATO? And on and on. Without the U.S., European defense will fall to pieces. So it's pretty harsh stuff. But what was Trump actually saying during these times? Well, he certainly was saying tough stuff. There's no doubt about that. But he also said these things. The fundamental question of our time is, do we have a desire and the courage to preserve our civilization in the face of those who would subvert and destroy it? He said a strong Europe is a blessing to the West and to the world. And we stand firmly behind Article 5. That was 2017. Okay, what about this latest? He's been much worse now, right? Well, he said this too. We want Europe to be strong. The two great wars of the last century served for us as a constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and always will be intertwined with yours. We want Europe to remain European, to regain its civilizational self-confidence. This doesn't sound like all the harsh stuff. But then J.D. Vance was really rough last year at Munich and Davos. But he also said this at those meetings. I fundamentally believe we're on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. We see Europe as our ally. We want to be an alliance where Europeans are a little more independent. And look at that bottom quote. I think the European nations were right about our invasion of Iraq. And frankly, Europeans have been a little more independent, a little more willing to stand up. Maybe we could have saved the entire world from strategic disaster. That was the American-led invasion of Iraq. That does not sound like what you've been hearing about the Trump administration. Now, what's behind all of this? Well, it turns out the U.S. presidents have been fairly critical of our NATO allies for a long time because they haven't stepped up. Look at this. Ronald Reagan. Our European allies must do more to meet their own defense needs. The United States cannot and should not bear the entire burden of defending the free world. That was 1981. Bush said essentially the same thing. We've long carried a disproportionate share of the defense burden. The second Bush, some of our NATO allies are not meeting the commitments to spend on defense. This is unacceptable. It's not just Republicans. Bill Clinton said the United States cannot and should not be the only nation willing to pay the price for freedom of Europe. Barack Obama says the United States spends more than 3 times the average of our European allies on defense. This is not sustainable. Our allies must do more. What are they talking about? Well, here's what they're talking about. Throughout all that time, this is what they spent. Europeans in red, United States in blue. All those presidents pushing on NATO and pushing on our allies. It did nothing. They just kept not spending. And it's not because the United States is so much greater. GDPs are similar during much of this time. Here's the cumulative impact on the United States. So this is going from 1990, this is cumulative defense spending. There's almost $11 trillion of difference in defense spending. That's about a third of our debt. So we've been paying for their defense so they could spend all their money on nice railroads and social programs. But that's not the real reason behind this. You see, we're going to spend money on defense anyway. The real reason is the next two charts. Here's the U.S. and EU GDP for the past 25 years. You see the difference? We're growing. They're kind of not. A little bit. Not as much. Okay, well, why does it matter to us so much whether the Europeans really grow? This last chart is the explanation right here. This is GDP per capita versus various economies. The United States is like 89,000. You got Australia, United Kingdom, Canada, EU, South Korea, and then the other ones, China, Brazil, India. Now, sure, China's a gigantic economy. Their GDP is almost as large as ours. But their GDP per capita is nothing. So if America's going to export more and produce more, who's going to buy it? It's not the Chinese, not the Brazilians, not the Indians. They don't have any money. We need strong Europe. We need Europe's GDP per capita to go up so they can buy U.S. goods. For decades, we've been trying to help Europe do this. Being gentle hasn't worked. The Trump administration tried being really rough and aggressive. And what did we see? We saw European leaders getting their backs up, getting filled with national pride and pushing for Europe to be better. All you have to do is listen to anything that Giorgia Meloni has to say. You're even hearing Keir Starmer and Carney of Canada starting to talk tough. And now that that's actually happening, now you get the Rubio speech talking about working together and being friends forever. So what do you think? Comment below and tell me how ridiculous I am, or agree with me. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Thank you very much. This is The Briefing.